Winter Tuesday for me feels good. First time in a month and a half that I've been able to say that, so that's been nice to see. But joined here for a mid-season, yes, mid-season pod here with Nick Bucher. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be in here. Feels crazy to think we've played half our season already, but
Yeah,
awesome having fun.
yeah, figured it would be a good time to have you back on just because you did our week one and our big draft show. So kind of talk about some of the guys that we missed on as far as where we thought the value is going to be. And there's plenty of players we like, didn't like that kind of are still middling. Still don't really know where that are working out, but there are a few that we wanted to highlight. But first things first, Mike and I did the picks last week. We each picked all the same teams, and we both went 6-0. So clearly we knew what we were doing. So that brings my record over 500. At least I'm over 500 and something, 19 and 17. And then the guest picker spot is 21 and 15. So, Nick, you got some shoes to fill. So,
That's even more crazy. I think the week I was on it before, I went like 2-4, 1-5 or something. That's hilarious.
yeah, it's I've had a few stinkers, but yeah, last week was good. So first thing I have here is players that I really liked going into the draft here. And I'm gonna go ahead and share the get it all set up here. I should have did this before, pardon me, but I'll get up the draft board and share that screen. Oh man, should
Yeah,
have
man,
had
I
to
got
put
some
that.
too.
Cool. All right, boom, boom. All righty, so draft board here. So I'm gonna go over two players that I really like coming up for this year of the draft, and then I'll let you go over what you want to go over. But the first one I had was I really thought Miles Sanders was gonna have a nice year, but that Carolina team really has been rough to watch all around. Thielen's been great, but other than that, they've been pretty horrendous. So be interesting to see. They paid Miles Sanders, so I know their volume should be there, but it just hasn't been. And when it has been productive. And the other guy I had that I think everybody thought was poised for an explosive return to the NFL was Calvin Ridley the round
Oh, great
before.
one.
Yeah, like I mean, it's very easy to say, talent wise, all those images coming out of training camp, it looked like he was clearly a dominant force. Now he's just touchdown dependent, and he gets like 3 targets a game, and that's about it. So it's kind of frustrating, especially taking him in the third round like Ryan did. But I don't think I knocked the pick at all. I kind of liked it. I think I liked it at the time, but risky play, obviously. And so far, it has not worked out at all. But those were my two that kind of stood out to me.
Well, it's funny. Calvin Ridley's a great one, Matt, because Calvin Ridley is somebody I'd written down too. Right before the year started, there was a lot of buzz with Calvin Ridley in the high stakes fantasy football leagues. There's a main event type style leagues, NFBC or NFFC, pardon me. And because of all the steam he was getting, becoming like a late first round, early second round pick by then draft season, I even had a bet. I think it was 18 or 19 to 1 on him to lead the NFL in receiving yardage. Felt great about it after week one. But man, has he disappeared since then. And it's funny because I feel like it was going to go one of these ways. I would have guessed to go the other way, where he starts out real slow getting involved,
Right.
gets amazing as the year goes on. He ate in week one, by far the best week.
Yeah,
And
and week 5 was good too, but
week five was good, but other than that, man, this is a guy you can't even really feel great starting. I guess we get a touchdown there in week 4. Touchdown saved you, but
mhm.
I'm shocked by it. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't
even
know.
the targets are fine too, other than the touchdown week. But like, I mean, targets are solid. It's just he has not been connecting well at all.
It's just bizarre to me that Christian Kirk has been there.
Yeah,
And for the first week and a half or so, it seemed like he clearly had displaced Christian Kirk. He was the alpha again, the way we
yeah.
expected. And then since then, Christian Kirk has taken that job back.
Yeah, he's
It's been
since
pretty
week
clear
one,
that he's like
he's
that.
been double-digit consistency. It's amazing to me that he's probably predicted 10.6 when he's busted over that every single
Well, he's
what.
bad. Remember, we're going to trade him.
Mm,
So that works. Remember, he's bad. Calvin Ridley's the alpha there. But
yeah.
Calvin Ridley, I wanted to hit on too because he's one of mine. Um,
Okay.
Another one for me that I'm pretty shocked by,
Hmm.
if we're going to start with sort of higher end players, I want to talk about either Josh Jacobs or maybe a running back or Waddle if you want me to talk about a receiver.
I thought about actually both of those. Jacobs was one that I would have made my third on the list, but we can go over Jacobs
Let's do
first.
Jacobs then because he's getting the carries. He just hasn't looked as good. And the
Yeah,
Raiders, are they 3-4? They were about to be 4-3. They could have beaten, Caleb Badgett or whatever his
they're
name.
bad.
Yeah, and
Whatever they are,
it's
they're
more
bad.
shocking to me than them being bad that Jacobs has looked as rough as he's looked. I've got him in another league and I've been watching him play, and I see he's ranked 16th and he's not been terrible.
But
The
you
ball,
draft him in the first round, you want him to be top 10.
Exactly. So it is surprising to see. I mean, he's played every game. Once he ended that lockout, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be awesome. He's got enough time to get up to speed for a couple weeks. And I don't
Yeah.
think it's he's not to speed. I think it's just that maybe we're seeing some of the. I think other than like Derrick Henry for the last 5 or 6 years, there's very few running backs who beat the amount of carries he had last year without slowing down or just getting hurt again. So I hope I didn't just jinx him. Hopefully he puts it together in the second half. Like I said, I'm invested myself in him. But I've been really sort of surprised by the way he's played this year.
Yeah, and yeah, to your point there, it's maybe it point to that bad Raiders line, somewhat due to the quarterback play. People aren't worried about him losing or out throwing the coverage or anything like that, so they can just load the box. I know they had Devontae. That's a whole other situation that we don't really have to get into if we don't want to, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's a contender for it too. It's surprising because he's been good, but not great.
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, but again, when you get guys of that echelon first, second round, I mean, Devontae Adams is arguably still the best overall receiver in the league. And I don't think you're gonna get much pushback from too many people on that. But yeah, that offense is just putrid. So I think the quarterback play has a lot to do with that. I think offensive line play. But yeah, I mean, to your point though, volume is definitely there. I mean, this past week was bad, but that was just a really weird game, all in all. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty much over 20 touches other than week 2, almost every game. So yeah, that's tough. And then you said you had Waddle to touch on as well.
Waddle's somebody I was super excited about coming into the year. Waddle's been confusing for an entirely different reason. Unlike Jacobs, who was getting volume you thought you would get all year. Waddle has. I know he missed the one game and he's come out of 2 games early, but his first year and then last year with Tyreek Hill, he has been sort of the 1A, 1B, and this year it is clearly not that way anymore. Now he is very clear, and I'm not faulting the Dolphins for it either. Tyreek Hill is probably the most irreplaceable non-QB in the NFL. I mean, I would give him as much of the targets as you can too.
Sure.
But it is interesting for fantasy because last year and a half or so, 2 years now, pardon me, of Waddle has not really gone this way. Now he is seeing a lower target share. His targets aren't terrible, but when you look at share, just with how much they're throwing and the stats too is putting up, you'd really like him to have a bit more than he's had so far. So I think he's been disappointing. I don't think he's someone you bench or anything. He's not someone I have him in this league, so obviously I like him still fine. But he's somebody I thought was, a borderline top 10 receiver and maybe more if Tyreek were to get hurt somehow, God forbid, with a really good floor. And now he's somebody I look at as like a receiver too.
Yeah, and that's you and I were discussing Chris Olave earlier in text, which ironically enough was the next pick that I have. Pretty similar arc, but his targets seem to be better than Waddle's do. It's just the production hasn't been there. So
They're a choose your own adventure. Do you want the one with a little bit less targets, but a way better offense? Or the one mid offense, but getting about the targets you would have guessed?
Right. So it's those who've been the rough guys for the most part. But I mean, very easily any of those players could very quickly turn this around and become RB1, RB2s, or wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2s very quickly. With the remaining schedule and everything like that. And then guys that
one more two I've got. I want to give the last one. We've gone through them all.
Oh yeah, sure.
Quite as high up here, but Damian Pierce, man. If I told you the Texans would start at 3-3 and be as good as CJ Stroud has been on offense, I would have assumed Pierce. Dude, I would have said he's like a top 12 running back probably. He looked so good last year.
Yeah.
And a combination of them not using him quite as much, just maybe he looks a little bit worse. I'd be curious what you think as someone who had him last year. I don't have many in leagues. I did watch some of his last week's Texan game, and I feel like he didn't look all that different to me. I think he still looks like a good player. It's just surprising me. And Devin Singletary's playing way more than I would have thought. What's going on with that? I'm very shocked by how poorly he's played.
Yeah, to your point, he was someone that I thought about keeping going into the season, just because I thought he had a lot of upside. That young offense obviously looked much better than anyone could have anticipated. So it's shocking to see that they're throwing as much as they do, and that the productive running has not been there. Again, kind of like Jacobs, the volume is pretty consistently there for the most part. I would say ticking down, but he came off 24 and 20 carries. It's not very productive. I mean, look at those averages. The best he's had is 3.5 yards a carry. So I don't know if it's a lack of vision issue or because that line's not that bad.
No, it's played way better. They've played most of the season without both of their starting tackles, and they've still been an above-average offensive line.
Maybe it's the scheme. It's hard to really say because again, Pierce, he runs. I think he runs well. I don't think
he looks mostly the same player to me too.
Yeah, so I can't put my finger on it, but it just hasn't looked good all year.
It just concerns me too, though, because you're right. I mean, he got 24 and 20 touches the 2 weeks before the last game, coming before the bye against the Saints. But that Saints game, I think Singletary got either 10 or 11. Like it was pretty close to me.
I think Singletary is only going to uptick as things go on. It also might be a situation where, kind of like I was talking about with the Raiders, like that, you're going to let Stroud beat you with his arm. You're going to load the box. And, sure, Nico Collins has played great. And Robert Woods has found the fountain of youth down there. And so they have some weapons that are working out nicely for him. But it just really seems like teams are maybe more stacking the box, and that maybe the run scheme's not as complex as it possibly could be. They maybe just throwing stuff out there, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
maybe.
good
Like
one
you said,
too.
those receivers, Tank Dell too. They've got 3 receivers who all played.
Yeah, Tank Dell's been a nice surprise this year as well. But yeah, so was that all your ones that have stuck so far?
On the positive side, yeah. I mean, I have some ones who I thought would be worse who have played better.
Yeah, I was going to shift us into that next, so I'll let you kick that off with your list.
So someone I thought would be worse than they've been so far, Alvin Kamara. I thought
Mm,
it's really small sample size because he missed a few games, but my concern was never with Kamara necessarily talent. I thought he'd still be good when he played. I was more so concerned because we saw what Jamal Williams did to DeAndre Swift's value last year when they
yeah,
played together. And then when the Saints brought him in, I had all these scary flashbacks of Mark Ingram, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, taking all Kamara's touchdowns. In the last couple of years, Kamara has been buoyed in a huge way. I mean, he's been like an RB1 high end with those touchdowns. If you take away the
yeah,
touchdowns and you have a little bit of concern, maybe the offense becomes a mid offense. We're talking about with Olave, for example, too. The Saints are probably a middle of the pack offense at best. I was like, now maybe instead of being an RB1, even when he's back, he to me feels like a low end RB2. But
Mhm,
Mars looked great. And Derek Carr, it's funny after seeing Derek Carr with Josh Jacobs last year and some of his running backs he played with
mhm.
previously in his career, man, he loves to check down to Kamara. If Kamara played a full season with Carr, he's going to break.
150
Is it
catches,
Matt
yeah,
Forte who has the record for the most receptions of a running back? He'd break it, dude. And that's going to make
yeah,
him valuable the whole way. So
yeah.
kudos to Josh. I remember this was a contentious one. Great pick, Josh. I remember we both kind of gave you grief. And again, I want to make sure the grief is clear. I didn't say he's a bad player. I just said I don't know if I love him where you got him, but I was wrong. He's going to have a great rest of the year. I've changed my opinion on him entirely. Situations.
Yeah, I would 100% pretty much agree with everything you said there. I mean, even when Josh was live making the pick, I was either like, because Kamara, it feels like the last couple of years, running production wise, has decreased, and he really became almost like a knockoff Austin Eckler as far as his
Oh,
PPR ability and things of that nature. So touchdown dependent kind of player. But man, I mean, you look at the carries they're giving him. They're giving him that bell cow carry load again, which we haven't really seen from the Saints in the last couple of years. And you touched on the what Christ, 35 receptions in 4 games for a running back on top of all of those carries. So guys getting the ball a ton. You'd love that in any sort of PPR format. So great pick. He was also on my list as a guy that I knocked. So I pretty much
look at
agree with
his first
everything
4 games,
you
man. We were scared he was touchdown dependent and might lose that with Jamal Williams. I don't think he's losing anything with Jamal Williams now, watching the way they deployed them. But he's
said.
only got
Now,
one touchdown in 4 games, and he still put up these stats.
yeah, and that's what makes you feel really good because even if Jamal
Great.
Williams does steal them, it doesn't might not matter because he's putting up 20 points a week. It
He's
feels
getting
like
8 catches a game. I don't really care if he scores 0 touchdowns.
right. So who's next on your list here?
So the next one for me, in the sense that he was better than I expected. Let's see. My thing's freezing up. You go and give me one real quick.
The number one I had was Raheem Mostert.
Oh, he's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, my concern with him coming into the season, I knew older running back. He's 31 years old, has a history of hamstring problems. We talked about that at length during the draft review that I don't like guys with hamstring problems. And plus, Mike McDaniel had that San Francisco offense where they play anybody in the world at running back until they got Christian McCaffrey last year. But in this case, they had Jeff Wilson Jr. They drafted Mostert, or I'm sorry, A-Chain, however you say it. And then obviously Mostert had a nice year last year. So, coming in, I liked Mostert as a player, but it just, we didn't know where the volume was going to be. And clearly, even like, I mean, he's had a couple games where he's had a ton of targets, but he's just making the most of his opportunities. I mean, look at
So
these
efficient.
clips because it's obviously a ton of touchdowns. I think he still leads the league in touchdowns, but I mean, huge clips on averages here. The receptions helping, obviously the touchdowns really carry here. But man, yeah, I was way off on this guy.
Yeah, he's so efficient. I liked Jeff Wilson Jr. late and A-Chain late, and Mostert probably the least of the three. And my thing did load. One of mine, another running back, DeAndre Swift, in similar situation, amazing offense,
Yeah, that's a good one.
great situation. I was big on Gainwell coming into the year. I thought Gainwell
Me
would be.
too.
I also thought Rashad Penny would get some run and just nope.
You and I disagreed on that one, but yeah, he's boomed 5 out of 7 weeks, which is pretty phenomenal for a guy that we thought was dead. But
Well,
he
just like
looks
the Calvin Ridley fake fire week 1, dude. Week 1, Gainwell was the guy, and then Gainwell got hurt.
yeah, it was weird because he
There's a
had
scenario
one.
where Gainwell stays healthy, and we don't ever see this. And I'm not trying to backtrack in any way on the take. I thought Gainwell was the better guy I own, and clearly once we saw Swift, Gainwell's the backup now. But man, the Swift and the other thing with this too is Swift looks great. He's getting a bell cow role. He's playing incredible in it with that offense around him, but he's also not getting hurt. And for a guy who I feel like always, whenever he gets more than 10 touches, 12 touches a week, you risk dinging him up. He's been very durable. So way to go with Swift. Great late pick.
Yeah, he seemed very fragile with the Lions, and then obviously we saw with a Lions team that still to this day likes to use all their running backs on their roster.
Shamir Gibbs is just in that role now.
Yeah, until Montgomery comes back, but we'll see because Gibbs has played great last week. But yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. That's you do notice a trend here ticking down, but still, I mean, I'm not too concerned about that. Like you said, he's clearly the guy, and yeah, so no arguments there. It's definitely a good take. RB8, that's impressive. It's funny because Ryan last year drafted him as his first round draft pick. Ends up getting him back here in the 7th round. Clearly,
Yeah, I think it was like round 7 or something like that.
So clearly the rounds got flip flop from year to year, but worked out this year. Do you have anybody else on your list?
Ayuk, because he's right there looking at him anyway. That's your receiver. I've been the running back. Let's do my receiver, and it's Ayuk because coming into the year, I didn't think Ayuk would be bad. But I had him ranked, I think, lower than consensus. And he's missed a game, and he's still, I believe, in the top 20 at receiver.
Yep, 19. So just
there you go. So you've felt good pretty much every time you played him. And to me, watching him play this year, he is clearly the one. Even when Diva played with him, which is not to knock Diva. Diva's still an excellent player and going to have his role. To me, it's interesting because it seems like outside of a couple blow-up games, they just sort of both feasted and Ayuk more than I would have expected at the expense of Kittle. But Ayuk looks excellent. I thought he was probably a low 2, high 3, and he's very easily like a top 13, 14 receiver. Probably I think that's probably where I'd have him roughly. Low, almost a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, the volume's there. Just needs some touchdowns to really ascend him into that upper wide receiver 1 true fantasy standing. But yeah, I mean, I'll gladly take 9 points minimum every week from if I can put a guy in the lineup, I know he's going to give me at least 9, 10 points at a low. I'm in. So
when you average 15 with 2 touchdowns, just wait till the touchdowns start to because you're on the best one of them. Like once that corrects, you're going to be doing great.
Right. I'll give you my last running back first, and it's actually one of your picks, and I will acknowledge that when I am wrong. Kenneth Walker. I thought Charbonnet was going to be a bigger role.
Yeah, I remember talking about this with you.
Yeah, and I kind of expected him to diminish, but man, he is a stud. 26 carries last week. It just goes to show you don't need no Charbonnet. This dude's a stud. He's a stallion. He runs hard. He sees the field well. Just a really good player. Yeah, so I wanted to shout that one out because I was definitely wrong there. I know you were high on him, so but yeah, it's just somebody that I thought was going to be a little bit lower but obviously I was wrong. But who's your receiver?
No, it was just gave him.
Yes. That was it. And who was you said you had one less running back?
Yeah, I did. But looking at it in real time, I did it backwards. It's another guy who the other way, what we were doing a little bit ago. It's Ramondre Stevenson, one of your dudes.
Okay.
Or your dude last year, pardon me. I've got him in the league too. I thought he would be better than he is. So he doesn't belong on this list. He belongs on the last one.
Sure, I got you. Yeah, I kind of felt I was pretty low on him. He hasn't. So he's been one of those like low, and he's been kind of low. But you seem like you were higher on him.
Coming into the year, I thought he was like the 12th running back, and I'm not saying that early on. I'm saying that like on draft day, he was either 12 or 13 for me.
I got you.
He's ranked 21, so he's not like he's doing nothing for you.
Well, last couple of weeks he's kind of bounced back. The rushes are a concern, but
to me, it's more. I'm not necessarily ready to change that. I think he's a bad player or anything. It's kind of like the Kamara take, where the way they're using him is different than what I thought. Not the way they're using him is different than I thought per se. Although he is getting a little bit less action, I would have thought Zeke took more than I would have guessed, and games are both playing in.
Yeah.
To me, though, it's just the Patriots. I know they just beat the Bills and
they stink
this week. They're just worse than I thought.
They're
I thought the
awful.
Patriots offense would be respectable, like the 25th or 23rd best offense, and they're one of the worst ones to watch.
Yeah, by far. All right, well, that pretty much wraps that up. I think we each, I'm glad we kind of had some same and some differences there. Stop the screen share. Time for the interview segment of our illustrious podcast. Kind of want to, just a couple different questions that I have here, a couple mail-ins, a couple emails, and just kind of wanted to go over them with you. There's been a lot of chatter this week in group texts and whatnot, or podcasts, other fellow co-hosts at points, discussing that your team really isn't that true number one first place team, or you're not that deep. But even just with saying that, despite you having the most points for in the league so far, what do you say to those comments? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's anybody who is not sure if I'm the cream of the crop there. I would say first, we're only halfway through, so maybe you end up being right. But I'd say secondly, any week where I don't get negative points from a quarterback, I'm going to probably be towards the top of the week every single week. And like you said, Matt, I'm at the top in points. You've said it on some of the other ones where I'm not on here with you. I think there's a tier of probably 4 or 5 teams at the top who are all pretty similar, myself included. But I don't know, man. I feel pretty good about my team. So
Yeah.
Tough week this past week. Again, Watson's off the team. He's gone forever. He's a great example of someone who were doing some quarterbacks. Guys, I didn't think he was going to be great, man, but he's just the worst. I hate him.
He's awful.
He's bad. I thought he would look sort of Deshaun Watson-ish again, like 60%, and he just – dude, they're better off with PJ Walker potentially.
I was gonna comment.
I think it's true.
I was gonna say it's kind of disappointing that you score 40 points with PJ Walker and you can't, and Watson's out there throwing backwards passes and throwing terrible interceptions, and so
he got bailed out of a second one too because the guy dropped the ball slightly. I mean, it's just embarrassing. But again, to answer your question, people coming for the champ, people coming for the guy at top right now. Keep coming, guys. I also love it as the one who's not really in your group of friends here, the way some of these other guys all are. You've all known each other for a long time. I love being fought at a little bit. I love the gripes.
Yeah, it's that people are going to bed thinking about you. So nothing wrong with that. But next one here, we got an email in from, make sure I get this email address right. North Carolina Big Babes Love Bald at us.69.u.com. So someone very interested in, I think our Trailer Park Boy Purcell here writing in is my assumption. Or it's a burner, one of the two, we don't know. You get to face the prestigious Purcell this week. Thoughts on his management style and his overall vibes for the league?
I think he's got a good team, man. I feel like it's a trendy thing, it seems like, in both the group chat and the guests on the pod, other than Purcell himself, that he's sort of one of the guys everybody likes to go after. His team's pretty good, and he did win, and I don't want to be too cavalier about that. But also, I don't know, man. It's interesting watching sort of as early as he took some of his defense kicker type picks. To me, I think he did a great job picking up Puka, though.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is probably going to end up being the pickup of the year.
Without question.
I don't have anything too critical to say of him other than the way he drafted his defense as kicker. I think each week, I don't know. I guess it's part of the fun of fantasy football. I don't love, if it's not obvious from the last question, I don't love doing trash talk.
Yeah.
It's not really my okay. Kind of just like to like.
You're win. A nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to win and just like have people do it in the background. But Purcell likes to do it. And I feel like that's great when it's working. But when it doesn't work, like, it's kind of a bad look.
Life comes at you fast when you talk shit. You can't back it up.
Yeah, but I think I play him this week. Is that why
you do? I think that's why I think that's why this rabid fan, I should say, sent this question in. So,
well, that should be a fun matchup then, because they're both going to be at full strength, man. No bye weeks.
Yeah, there's quite a few really good matchups that we'll get into here in a little bit. And then the last question I got in here was from Sparky Marky Andrews at hotlink.com. Dak Feldy and the waivers. What were your thoughts on that whole situation? And we kind of touched on it with Watson, but your QB situation thus far moving forward, because I know you've kind of had a tumultuous start with some of your quarterbacks.
I don't even know if I would say it's been that tumultuous. I've gotten some flack from pretty much every guest you've had on about having more than one or more than two, I guess, quarterbacks roster. Yeah. That seems like it's a easy low-hanging fruit thing to critique. My counter would just be, when you have amazing running backs and receivers, you don't need to have like 8 of each, so you can afford to platoon quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That said, I was wrong on Watson. Watson sucks. But Dak, I think, is probably not top 10, but probably like 11 or 12 a quarterback.
Yeah.
And good matchups, he's probably going to be around QB5, QB6. So I feel like on my team, I love seeing Dak fall out there. I have Kyler Murray with his practice window opened. I think between the two of them in the second half, I'm going to get more quarterback than I have so far. And I've been the top in points anyway without good quarterback play. So I'm not too worried. But the bigger point is I don't really mind carrying 2 or even 3 in the case of bye weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think some of the tumultuous comments were just more so directed towards like, Richardson getting hurt, and obviously Washington's been terrible, but like, you almost had to start Baker, and then you'd have been better starting.
I should have started Baker,
but we're here now.
Well, Richardson's tough too, man, because Richardson I feel very right about. Richardson was
I think you were right about Richardson. Yeah, he was looking phenomenal.
He just left 2 games in a quarter.
Just got to slide, man. Just got to get out of the way.
He'll learn with time. Fun player to watch.
No, I think he's a really fun player to watch going forward, especially fantasy-wise. I think he's going to be a slam dunk kind of guy. But yeah, I mean, from like an outside perspective, when I saw that you just all of a sudden had Dak in your lap, I was like, whoa. I mean, a lot of the guys, including myself, like I'm not in the market for looking for a quarterback with Herbert. So obviously I wasn't going to pull the flyer and take a roster spot for him. But someone like you who's had some injuries and some questionable play from your guys, that's got to be a nice name to see him floating out there in the wire. Yeah.
And I've heard criticisms of both my quarterback management, but also of not playing the waivers. So hopefully assuage that concern as well.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you're thinking of others with some of these thoughts. I'm glad some of these comments don't fall on deaf ears. Always nice to hear. So that being said, enough chit chat. Let's get into some football and some breakdowns.
Let's do it.
All right. So I got my first win in a month and a half. Felt really good. I was very lucky to dodge Jamar Chase in a bye week, and pretty fortunate Tua didn't do what Tua's been doing all year, and thankfully the 49ers defense shut down Madison for me, and I think partially due to Cam Akers looking rather good in that team. But Rashee Rice continues to be a great pickup for Tyler. I think he's got a good squad still. He's put up 170 the other day, and to talk about my team a little bit. I really like my team moving forward here. I know my record stinks, but I really feel like my team is very close to going on a run. I like a lot of these young receivers in Downs and Kirk and Palmer, and Aaron Jones is going to be on the pitch count soon. So I really think that my team's going to start sliding into those higher scoring realms again. Finally rebounding from that Chubb injury. But thoughts on this matchup here? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, tough matchup. You don't have Jamar Chase, best player, playing for your team, Coleman. So I think you hope you can win, but the fact he's put up about 100 points anyway, you don't worry too much about it. Tua gave you a really surprisingly low point total for where he's been all year. Etienne's awesome, though.
Yeah.
And he's probably an honorable mention for the segment we did earlier talking about guys. I wasn't necessarily wrong because I thought he'd be bad, but I didn't think he'd be like a top 5 right. I think he's like RB3 right now. I wouldn't worry too much about the team. RB3. Yeah. There we go. I like your team too, Matt. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is 8 teams make the playoffs in this league?
Yes.
So really at 2 and 5, you're nowhere near dead. I mean, you just need to spin off 2 more wins, and you could even go like 3 and 2, and you're still
historically 6 and 8 tends to get you in the playoffs, or comes down to tiebreakers to get in. So I'm definitely not dead. I need to go on a little bit of a run here to end the season, but I definitely feel like my team is getting close to performing. And Pacheco's another one of those guys that I think you could throw in there that's been a phenomenal surprise at RB8 for someone that I picked up in like the 8th, 9th round that I thought was going to be a flex option at best.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. One other guy you mentioned is Downs, and I think he's awesome. Darrell Henderson, by the way, on your bench next couple of weeks. I think Darrell Henderson's a guy you could keep playing. I know you don't necessarily need to in your flex, but I don't know. Downs and Henderson are 2 guys, especially in the last week or so, that I feel like I've.
Well, spoiler alert, Downs is in my starting lineup this week, so.
Is he? Good. Yeah. I think I agree with that. I'd play him over Palmer personally.
I think I actually have Palmer in there too.
Wow, okay.
We'll talk about who I benched, but we can get into that in the projections. But anything else to add based off the matchup here? Great pickup by Tyler to start in JSN, because frankly, 14.5 is going to be more than what Metcalf's probably going to put up all year. So
yeah, I think he did the same thing with Rashee Rice too. Rashee Rice has a lot of value beyond this week too. I think he's really stabilizing himself as the receiver to own in Kansas City.
Yeah, Yeah, he's been. I think he picked him up a couple weeks ago. I know Ed drafted him, but yeah, he's been quite a nice player to have.
So again,
So
Coleman, I get it, Tyler. Rough week here. Jamar's on bye. Metcalf didn't play, so your top
yeah,
two receivers, both of which are like top 4 round picks, top 3 round picks, couldn't help you, and you still missed one. You should feel pretty good, man. I think you're going to be in a good spot.
yeah, I agree. I like his team a lot, and I'll count my lucky stars. I deserve a break after
Well,
starting
you were
one
due
five.
there too. I mean, you've had some
Yeah,
rough weeks in a row.
a little bit.
It's
Moving on
real.
here to Team Nate versus Risky. Bijan Migrainson ruined the day here for Team Nate. That really stinks. I know the NFL's kind of looking into that because I mean, migraines happen. I get it, but man, that really stinks. Just say he has an illness, don't play him because obviously that ruined Nate's day because obviously he's going to plug in Foreman there because we knew he was going to be RB1 in Chicago and clearly that blew up in his face. So that kind of stinks. It's good to see Jonathan Taylor back out there doing good things. And then moving over to Risky Dipper here. Mahomes back to doing Mahomes things. He's been a little bit down this year. I know I highlighted that in a couple past pods, but yeah, 38, he's doing his thing. Good to see Saquon back doing his thing too. Just a really solid week. It's pretty nice when you only get 12 and a half points from your wide receiver spot and you still put up 120 spots. So this team is really good. I think they're very deep. Barring injury, with everyone, obviously. This team's in contention till the end for sure.
Yeah, I think Risky's one of the top few teams here to contend for the championship. I think even if you just have Zach Wilson the rest of the week, it's probably going to be Garrett Wilson jumps in there over probably Christian Watson moving forward, or maybe Stevenson if you want to play him in the flex.
Yeah.
And this team's 1 through 9, whatever the starting spots are going to be one of the better ones each week. That's a really good spot to be in. Team Nate, though, I mean, it's rough. Like you said, the Bijan thing. I think that's just kind of just variance. I don't understand what the hell happened there. I think he maybe had migraines and didn't realize it until the game had started. So you can't project for that. It sucks. You will definitely, if you get just an even average game from him, be at 100 points and be in contention to win most weeks. And you have A-Chain coming back eventually.
And
so,
Kyron Williams. So this team is ready to go.
Yeah, and Kyron's on the bench there too. I didn't see Kyron. I mean, that's a good running back core.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that Kyron and Foreman and A-Chain were all waiver wire pickups, obviously. But yeah, I mean that's just a really good job taking advantage of a slow start to the season and rattling off some wins. And now you are in a position where once these guys get healthy, this team can really roll. And that's what's really cool this year. I think this is really the first year where we've had so much parity. Like obviously we have these couple teams that are sitting more towards the top, but a lot of these, 4 and 3, 3 and 4 teams are really good still, and that's exciting to see, just as a league standpoint.
Well, I mean the top. I think with the points, I am still the top team, and you were second to last, and we're 3 games apart.
Yeah.
That's a testament to just how competitive it's been.
Yeah, and even I was looking at today, the points for spread, like it's all within like 100 points, give or take. Like there's not that much, week to week, someone can climb 4 or 5 spots in that ranking for sure. But yeah, I mean, both these teams are solid, but another good win for Mike here, rattling off another one. So moving on to one that, I didn't think was going to be this close.
Played some good defense.
Yeah, really good defense. But yeah, we're one, sucks that George kind of bailed on Jerry Jeudy here this week. Obviously, that would have been the difference, but I get why he benched him. Osborne one catch away on Monday night from getting it done for him. Very close. But yeah, I mean, I still like Milkman's team a lot. Obviously, he's second place in the league. Avoided the 35 bomb from Tyreek. 20 is still nothing to sneeze at, but we kind of expect 30 from Tyreek at this point. It feels like he definitely had the opportunity to. Cost me $120 on the parlay for that drop touchdown he had, but I digress. Kind of nice to see, if you plug in somehow and it doesn't work out, but kind of nice to get a win here with an 88 point. And then for George, you saw some signs of life here from your running backs, which is nice. I know you only scored 86 points, but at least Najee scored some touchdowns and Javonte, I think, scored as well. So this team still has some life in it. I think it's going to end up with a couple wins this year. Whether I don't think playoffs are really in consideration with the 0-7 start, but I do think this team can still come out with 2-3 wins this year and kind of have some showings here with these guys trending a certain way.
I'm calling now. George is going 7-0 in the second half.
There it is.
And he's going to upset me or whoever the 1 seed is at that time. And it's going to be an amazing story.
There it is.
I think the team is praised what you said. I don't think it's amazing. I loved it come draft day. I think it's still a very serviceable roster. You have some good players, just some guys who underperformed. On the other side, Zach, again, we joke play good defense, but you got the win. That's the most important thing. And you still have good players. So feel pretty good about you moving forward.
Yeah, not too much to say there. And then, moving on here to Purcell versus the Rock Boys. Are we concerned about Austin Eckler? Because this is 2 weeks now where he's looked meh. He doesn't run the ball. He's never really been like that amazing running back, but usually his PPR stuff is kind of what saves him fantasy wise. But this is 2 weeks in a row now, not cracking 10 points. And is that concerning to you?
Great question. It's one I'm actually super ready for as an Eckler owner in a different league. I found this stat yesterday that assuaged my concerns. So hopefully this gives you some solace, Josh. Last year, Austin Eckler through his first 3 games, I don't believe scored a touchdown, and I don't believe broke either 10 or 11 points in half-point PPR. And then after that, he put up like 26-ish points a game on average for the next 7 games. So as long as he is healthy, as long as the Chargers are the above average but not elite offense we think they are, and as long as he's getting most of the work. I know Kelly had a long touchdown, one of his few touches last past week.
Yeah, that sucked.
Eckler's getting most of the work, though.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I would not take him outside of my personal top 5 running backs, maybe top 6 at worst.
Yeah, and I feel like that's fair. I mean, I'm an Eckler owner as well, so I like to hear that. But yeah, I mean, like we talked about Kamara, he's been amazing. So moving forward here with CD Lamb, Austin Eckler getting back to the form that you say he's going to, and Kamara being how he's been, this team's going to be really good. This is still going to be a very, very hard team to beat. Kind of a wet fart noise for a lot of the guys in the starting lineup this week. Good to see Logan Thomas get 7 points because a couple really rough weeks for Josh on the tight end department. 92 points obviously isn't where you want to be, but
they're playing without both his top 2 receivers.
Yeah, and Thielen's back too. I didn't even mention him. Yeah,
that's what I mean, Thielen and CD.
Yeah, so this team's definitely going to quickly ascend back into being a 120, 130 scorer. I think maybe even higher with Eckler getting back to form. So, and then flopping over to Purcell here. Cooper Kupp, I wrote down, is he dead? Obviously, I know he's still going to be a really, really great fantasy player. But Puka's back up. But yeah, Puka was awesome on Sunday, man. So it's just going to be a 2-headed monster. Might turn in one of the situations we see for Ed with those 2 Eagles receivers week in, week out, where one eats and one's okay. So we'll see how that all works out. Nice bounce back for James Cook. I was really down on him after last week, and he was trending the wrong way. Bounced back in a big way this week, I think. And then Hurts looked good, and it's weird to see that Niners defense go negative. That's definitely an outlier. But yeah, it's moving forward here. Joe Mixon, I know, is going to get back in the starting lineup. I still really like this team. Obviously, those 3 receivers are going to be a problem all year to deal with for the most part. And so still a really strong team here, moving, I think, in the right direction with these guys. And Waller, obviously, is the one that I did not mention that finally showed signs of life. So I miss you, Darren.
Yeah, with Kupp and Puka, I think they got together. Like one of them got, I think, was 31. The other one got 37, maybe percent target share. Which, if you're doing that, you don't even need to be the Dolphins or the Bengals and the years with T. Higgins and Chase or Waddle and Hill. You can definitely be sustainably 2 top 15 or 2 top even 12 wide receivers.
Sure.
And I think that's sort of what you see from Kupp and Nakua the rest of the way. Nakua is somebody I think. I assume you rank Kupp ahead of Nakua because most people probably would.
You
the rest
have
of the way,
to.
they're both in my top 15, which is why I'm saying that.
Yeah, I think they're both must plays all the rest of the year without much question.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's that one. This past week obviously a really huge bye week for a lot of teams. I think there were like 6 or 8 teams on bye.
There were 8 teams on bye.
Yeah. So this obviously was a really depth check for a lot of these teams, and you kind of look at Josh's team. Not that this is a terrible lineup. 92 points, 93 points is still really serviceable. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, obviously not having your top 2 wide receivers is a huge impact to your week to week. And speaking of week to week, a team that we've kind of talked about has so much potential to be a top tier team. They're doing it. Top point getter for the week, Rearview versus Wuhan. Lamar continues his MVP push, playing phenomenal football and quarterback throwing from the pocket. For those who hate, Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he's finally gonna be the guy until Montgomery gets back. Who knows when that's actually gonna be. Really cool to see him put up 127 with Breece Hall on bye. That's really huge. Laporte is awesome. AJ Brown's awesome. Zay continues to be consistent. So there's a lot of really good signs on this team. I did make a trade with Ed today. I'm sending him Rashad White, and I'm getting George Kittle, kind of getting some running back depth for him. Obviously, George Kittle's just burning on his bench. So, win-win there because somebody traded away Darren Waller for a guy who tore his ACL. So we don't need to get into that. But anyway, then moving over to Wuhan, I didn't think he was going to crack 100 this week. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey and Kirk Chains had other ideas. 112, nice score with the running back getting 0. I mean, pretty solid day up and down the lineup there. Obviously, Sky Moore in the flex kind of stinks, obviously production-wise, but all in all, still a really solid squad. Nice bounce back, even though he gets a loss here, coming off back-to-back weeks of not breaking 100. Nice to kind of see some of these guys moving in the right direction again.
Yeah, and you can take Sky Moore out, and hopefully you can find a way to get Keontae Ingram and his 0 out of there. Next week you'll have, Debo, hopefully.
You get T back, and you get Miles Sanders back, and you might get Debo back, like you said, yeah.
And if you don't get Miles Sanders back, Chuba looked great in his audition for the role.
He did.
So hopefully, if I was actually the owner of both of them, I would say maybe even sit one more week out Miles Sanders and give me the workhorse role for Chuba, just because he kicked ass at it.
Yeah.
But this team's solid. Any team in McCaffrey's going to be solid.
Yeah, and any thoughts on Ed's squad? Just putting up a nice number there.
I like Ed's team, man. I think Ed's team is one of the top half teams. I think part of the reason it makes sense to do the trade he's doing with you, because I think in a vacuum I prefer Kittle to White just as far as raw value goes. But I do think, especially when you're someone who has to sometimes play Justice Hill, Brees is on bye, or God forbid if one of Brees or Gibbs get hurt, or if Gibbs goes back to getting 6 touches a week when Montgomery returns, you want to have a guy you can just put in there and feel okay about most weeks. And that is, I think, fair to say about White.
Yeah,
I think it's from both your parts.
Yeah, I think Rashad White has surprisingly had 13 points last week. His running his running has somewhat been Dameon Pierce like, but his production in the past game has been pretty solid. So he's still obviously the volume guy in Tampa. So it's clearly a depth move for him, but I think this roster with these prospect young guys, I think they're definitely sliding in the right direction. And I say it every week, but if this team could just float to 500 halfway through the year, look out. And here we are. I think we're going to see him climb the leaderboards.
I think they're both playoff teams.
Oh, for sure. I think there's a lot of really good teams. There's going to be probably 2 good teams that miss out on the playoffs, I would say.
I think Wuhan's actually either second or third in points scored. He was, I think, second going into the week, and he scored 112 here.
Yeah, so
I know he's 3 and 4, but I mean, I don't know. Good team.
At minimum, he's going to be probably top 4 in scoring, but yeah, still a really strong team. And McCaffrey's been obviously a godsend. So moving on to your matchup here, I'll let you go first. What you liked, what you didn't like. I know what you didn't like, but I'll let you take it.
I wasn't being sarcastic in the group message the other day. I think probably the best experience of fantasy football is when you're watching a Monday Night Football game.
Oh, for sure.
And you get it. Mm-hmm. So it sucks it came at my expense, but it's got really good for Ryan. I hope he enjoyed it. And I mean that legitimately, just because it's probably the best feeling. I can think of times I've had that happen. It's like, yes.
Even for me, just watching it, like I knew he had Addison going again, and right before half, you see that big touchdown catch, and I think I freaked out in the group chat because it is really cool when this stuff happens. I mean, it does suck beyond the end of it. And in our first championship game that Ryan won, he had Stephon Diggs going into it Monday night, and it was that game he put up 3 touchdowns, 210 yards.
Oh,
and Ed was up I think 42 points going into Monday night with no players left. So I think Diggs put up 46 and took down the crown for Ryan. So
Ryan's perfected this move. Ed,
he has. Seems to be Ryan's deal.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Next time I'll try to make sure I play him in a week where he has no one on Monday night. That said, I mean, the obvious lead here is, what if you put Baker in there instead of Deshaun? Well, then you win. Didn't do that, though. Got to live with it. Move on to the next week. All things considered, scored 103 without my top 2 running backs in my QB1. And I took a negative from the backup quarterback, so I'm not too worried about it. I think my team's pretty solid. I think Ryan's got a good team, too, though. It's not just that I threw up over myself here. This team's good. I know I said Calvin Ridley's been a faller, but Travis Kelce is not just tight end 1, but he is top
wide receiver 5.
Yeah. And Devontae Adams is still relatively slow, but I don't know, man. When they came out of the gates yesterday or Sunday now, he got, I think, 5 of the 6 first passes were targets to him. So clearly they're going to feed him. It's just a matter of time before I think he starts taking back the touchdowns right now that Jacoby Myers is getting, at least some of them. Swift, I talked about, I think is a huge winner. This is like a solid team. It's not a team that just got lucky. I know Addison did it a lot for you last night, and he looked really good though. And I
Yeah, he
mean,
did.
even when Jefferson comes back, number 2 job is wide open, so he might continue to be good.
Yeah, and he was even very serviceable with Jefferson in the
Right, he
starting
was scoring
lineup.
when Justin
So
Jefferson did play. Still, you're right.
yeah, the glaring concern obviously for Ryan here is what you're going to get out of Ridley. But if you're going to get this production from Kelsey, Addison, and Adams, it doesn't really matter. This is going to be really another formidable team here. Just it's pretty crazy that this is the ninth ranked team in our league currently, and this is a roster you could very easily see being 5-2 or 6-1. So you can make a case for a lot of teams like that. So it's just really cool to see. But yeah, my just a Jordan Addison legacy game that that kind of stinks. And obviously the difference was Deshaun Watson, but yeah, it's that's I don't blame you for playing him against a suspect indie team. He just got hurt and frankly looked terrible as well. But you're gonna
Yeah,
get
he's just
not.
not good.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's all playing out. But moving
Baker is
on.
staying on as the backup until Kyler's healthy.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Watson's
probably
gone.
probably a good call. I'm gonna go in reverse order this time. I'm gonna do myself last for the projections, switch it up a little bit, keep the
Ooh.
viewers guessing so they can't just go to their particular part of the video and then not watch anything else. But we got Wuhan versus Tomcat here. Two teams that have been struggling to hit projections. Last week, obviously, they went over their projections. So that's good to see. We're gonna slide Miles Sanders in here probably. And we're going to slide T. Higgins and Debo possibly into the starting lineup, get a new kicker. This projection is going to be a lot closer. Should be a really sweet game. Where were some of the notes I had here? Ground game for the Vikings, I think is going to be a big play against Green Bay because I don't think Green Bay is very good. So I don't foresee a ton of air raid from Kirk like you had against San Francisco in that tight game. And then, Jacoby Myers, I think kind of like you hit on, I think that sliding production is going to start to happen soon. I don't have any factual reason as to why exactly, other than the fact that you have a superstar receiver who you pay a ton of money to that who's pissed off.
I think he's good. It's just that right now he's gotten most of the touchdowns is the thing for me.
Yeah, then that's
And Adams has
fair.
historically been a touchdown hog.
Right. And I'd agree with that. And we got looking over to Ryan's team here. We're full strength ready to go. I know that RB2 spot's a little concerning because obviously Gus had that one huge play last week, but other than that, he was okay. He had a touchdown, obviously, but still serviceable. You'll take that out of an RB2 if it's 10 points. Calvin Ridley's obviously a concern. The big, what are you going to get out of Adams? Kind of like we talked about a bunch already, but I think these projections feel really good. I think Wuhan's going to be probably closer to that, probably close to 120 as well. I think this is going to be a really high scoring week across the league with everyone pretty much full strength again on their roster. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really high scoring week. So I think Ryan's projection feels pretty right, and I think Wuhan's going to get pretty close there. And I actually have CMC having a monstrous day against Cincinnati. I know it's a crazy take to have that CMC is going to have a good day, but I think Wuhan's going to get to 4-4 here and get the win.
Yeah, CMC hasn't not scored a touchdown in like over a year now. But side note though, yeah, do you know why there's no buys in week 8? What are we doing? Why are there all these buys in like weeks 4, 5, 6?
Got to be for TV reasoning, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic
We
there.
came off all these London games. We got people going to Germany next week. Maybe that's a factor. I don't know.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
I'll take the other side with you though here. I agree with you. I think Wuhan, I mean, right now that stupid 99 numbers giving you the 0 from Keontae Ingram or whatever. It's giving you Sky Moore again. Like you said, T. Higgins, Debo, probably one of Chuba, Miles Sanders break their way in that lineup. I think it's a 120 plus projection too. For me, it's more just that I think Ryan's got a really good set of matchups here. I love Lawrence against the Steelers. I love Gus, probably with a lot of game script in his favor against the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he's not amazing, I think he's going to get a lot of carries in the second half, probably get another rush touchdown or two. And Kelsey, just I think his best stats against any team are against the Broncos for his career. So give me Kelsey to just cook. Mm-hmm. I think if Kirk does well, probably Addison capitalizes a little bit on that. So that's going to help him there too. And if Kirk doesn't, oh well. I mean, it's his quarterback versus your flex. And then also, I think Butker, kicker advantage. There's no such thing. Watch, I say this, and Elliott's going to score 20 more points. But
kicking at Mile High is good, though.
Yeah, exactly. Mile High Stadium. He's probably going to be leading. Elliott's probably leading too. You want kickers when they're leading. When you're down, you don't go for field goals. You go for touchdowns. You have to. So you want a team that's winning. They're both going to win. But again, exactly that. DC is not a great field. Butker, though, is going to be kicking in the best place outside of some of these domes to kick. So I will go very slightly with Ryan for this.
Yeah, and I honestly like looking at these teams. I like Brian's roster better player wise. I have a hard time thinking that Christian McCaffrey's not going to put up another 30 piece, and the rest of this team's going to not put up another 100 betwixt the rest of
I think they're
them.
very
So.
comparable rosters when you get Debo and T.
Yeah, I do agree with your Kelsey take. I just have a hard time going against CMC right now. But I think it's gonna be a close game because obviously he blows every projection out of the water. So that's just
Agreed.
why. But glad we have some parity though. Not just going same picks down the line here. So
Well, maybe we should though, because apparently you guys are good when you pick the same things.
then we'll just go opposite of each other and we'll end up 3-3.
Good deal.
But here's your matchup. I'll let you go first.
Yes, this is a tough one. Both at full strength, I think it's pretty accurate projection there, a point or so either way. Looking at it, I'm not crazy about some of my matchups. I'm not crazy about some of his either, though. It's interesting when you say that. I think we both have a lot of star players, but I think this probably is about where it lands. I have a few on mine I like a little bit more. I have a few on his I like a little bit more too, but I have a few on both of them I don't think probably eat as much as it says they will. At the end of the day, I will slightly lean that I think I do pull this out. I know it's fun to pick yourself and it's fun to pick the team that has the one next to it. But more than anything, it's just because I have a feeling Derrick Henry and Pollard, all my guys coming off buys. I know he had Mixon on buy too. I just feel like workhorse running backs off a bye usually get fed historically. It's a thing I like to sort of count on. So I don't even know necessarily like my team that much more than Purcell's. In some ways, his team is as good or better. But for a week where the two workhorses come off a bye, I do really like it personally.
Yeah, and you kind of took a lot of my points. I think where the difference really lies for me is of late, the Eagles have not played Washington well for whatever reason that is. Especially I think Washington beat them in Washington last year, and obviously they went to overtime in Philly last time they played. So I don't know if he gets close to that projection. He might have a couple turnovers. He's been a little more turnover prone this year than he has in years past. So I feel like that projection's a little high. And then I don't like Joe Mixon all this week, barring a goal line touchdown against San Francisco.
Agreed.
Obviously, I think Akers and Madison combined for like maybe 12 points on the ground.
And that's the game where they were leading the whole way.
Yeah, so I don't really like and Mixon isn't the bell cow that he used to be. When you look at Henry or Pollard, well, Henry's not even, but you look at Tony Pollard, who gets 30 carries a game, like that's a bell cow. Mixon used to be that way, but he just doesn't seem to be that way. So I think that's going to be a really big difference maker. I do obviously love Purcell's receivers, and I love your running backs. I love your running backs more. I love your running backs more than his receivers, I should say. My concern for your team is what are you going to get out of Waddle? You do have some hope that Bill Belichick's like, hey, I'm going to take away Tyreek Hill this week.
That is what I'm hoping.
And Waddle has a little bit more success and finds the end zone maybe. And DJ Moore seems to be rocking and rolling with this new white chocolate quarterback we got going on in Chicago. He's an interesting fellow if you haven't heard him do an interview yet. But no, I just like your running backs more. I think all of them are going to outperform their projections. I think this is going to be an extremely high scoring game, probably into the 130s for both you guys. But I do give you the edge, and I'm going to pick you to win as well.
Good deal there. Yeah. Moore's one I didn't say on earlier, but like Kenneth Walker, I think he was one of the other ones you gave me grief about. And honestly, though,
I did.
Nice about him just now, but I mean, his best 2 or 3 games, I think his best 2 and maybe his best 3 have come with Fields. So I want Fields back for him. I know he got last week, but Fields likes him.
Oh, sure. It's just nice to see when you're looking at volume. What usually when a backup quarterback comes in, some of the frontline guys kind of take a step back. But obviously his volume has been the same, but he is more explosive with Fields. So I'd agree with you there. Moving on here, we got Ed versus George. The projections for Georgia's running backs feel a little low to me just based on how they did last week. I know it's one game, but it feels like maybe Denver's getting some momentum coming off a win, and the Steelers' offense looked the best looked in like 3 years. So, maybe there's they figure something out in the run game that's going to work. And then I think the Texans D actually probably has a nice, I don't usually I like defenses too much, but that Carolina offense is really bad. And obviously with a rookie quarterback, you're going to get some turnovers. And the Texans defenses have a nice defensive line to get pressure. So I could see sacks, I could see turnovers, fumbles, all that kind of fun stuff. Then you flip over to Ed here. This team's really clicking. This is what I feared when you had Gibbs and Hall. projected 35 points between the two of them. As we could go here, AJ Brown's been on an unbelievable pace here. Laporta continues to be an absolute rock star for a tight end, just extremely consistently solid. You're going to get what you're going to get every week, which I will take for a tight end, as opposed to anyone not named Travis Kelce. You might get 1 point, you might get 20. The Laporta seems like he's going to get you at least 8 to 10 every week at minimum. So it's nice to see. Flowers has been a great flex all year. Not too much. We got green checks all on the right side. I think it takes us down pretty easy.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. You see the green check on every single one of them.
Yeah.
My bold prediction is George will win one of these position matchups, maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4.
Okay.
That said, though, I mean, I don't have a ton of different stuff to add. I think Ed wins this one. I think George cracks 100. I do agree with you about some of what you said. You mentioned the Texas defense positively. I'm a little bit worried about them, though, just because Carolina is coming off a bye. And I think when you have 2 weeks of game plan for someone, I don't know. I worry a little bit. I know that so are the Texans, but extra time doesn't necessarily help you.
Just with how Young's been playing, it concerns me. And their line's really bad.
So, I don't think Bryce puts up a ton of points either. I don't know.
Sure, no, the 2-week factor definitely is a concern, but yeah, I just think you kind of feast on a rookie quarterback making a couple of mistakes with a good defensive line. Is more so what I'm thinking. But yeah, I mean, they're very vulnerable, obviously.
The other one is I think Burrow probably beats that projection as long as he doesn't hurt his calf again somehow, just because they're going to have to throw to try to keep up.
Absolutely.
Even if he's not doing well, they're going to have garbage time.
For sure. So I think, that projection feels really low for Burrow as well. I know he's been pretty rough this year, until recently, but so but Ed, you think Ed would still just a little bit closer?
I'm with you on Ed.
Just probably a little bit closer than I think it might be, possibly. So maybe we'll see. No spread lane.
Well, I guess actually I said George is going to win out from here. So if you didn't notice, I edged perfectly because either I'm right 10 minutes ago or I'm right now. I'm going to pick whichever one's right after this and tweet it out.
I like it. Let's see. So what are we on? We're on Coleman versus Rock Boys here. Tyler coming off that week. We do see Dameon Pierce on the bench. I think that's probably appropriate at this point. We get Chase back, we get Metcalf back, probably pretty much full go roster here. Does ETN continue to roll? I think so. Madison. I don't know how do you feel about Alexander Madison moving forward?
I like a lot of players on Coleman's team. I don't think Madison's good, and I think it shows that when they're trying to ice the game away, they use Cam Akers, who also isn't good.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the front half, but not by a ton in a platoon on a team that's bad at running.
So I think that projection is going to just continue to slide down. I don't love Chase. I mean, I could see Chase having 1 point this week against Sanford. I could see him having 50. Obviously, Addison had a fantastic day. I think they're obviously going to queue on Chase a lot more than they probably were on Addison. Just to guess, based off the pedigree. But yeah, so I do think this projection feels a little low for this team. I think ETN probably has another huge day, and I think Tua, is going to get past that 20.5. Home game against New England, team that you don't like, that's not really good, really banged up on defense. They're coming off their Super Bowl, and you're coming off a really bad performance. So it kind of smells the recipe of we're going to put up another 50 burger in my mind. So I like Coleman's team here, and then just switching over to Rock Boys. Full health, we kind of touched on Eckler. Is this the week that he bounces back? I think it's a really good opportunity against a really bad Chicago defense, but they made the Raiders look pretty bad, so we'll see about that. Other than that, new kicker for Josh here. Obviously, Maher's gone. Cowboys defense back in there, ready to go, score 50 points again. So I think Rock Boys predictions. I think both these predictions are pretty low. I think this is more of a 120 something game between these two teams, just based off these players. But I do think Tyler, actually, I don't know why I picked Tyler for some reason, but I'll stick with what I wrote down when I was thinking a little more clearly, I guess. And I'll take Tyler's team.
I think you're right. It'll be close. I don't feel like this is one that's going to get away from either of them. I do lean Josh. Like I said earlier, I do think Eckler gets back on track. You're right. Chicago's a great matchup. Albeit that Jacobs didn't do a great job last week. I think he probably will. And for me too, I think CeeDee Lamb has a big game here. He's been whining a lot about targets coming out of the bye. I feel like you might see Devontae Adams type first quarter effort to pepper him, and he's also just probably going to eat anyway. So I like their matchups a lot. I would say probably by 5-10 points here, you see Josh win this one. I think they're very close, though. Probably both are in the well over 100, 120-ish range, maybe.
Yeah. So okay. So we're kind of in the same thought process. I think it's gonna be there's a lot of really good games this week on the board, and this is definitely one of them. Moving on here to Risky versus the Milkman. Little business partner matchup here. Risky.
Are they together?
Yeah, they are. They run an insurance company together. So, yeah,
Nice.
business
Okay.
buddies. So a lot of shit talked in the office this week, I'm sure. But it appears Christian Watson is healthy. I know he went down with a knee late. It seems like he avoided a serious injury. Garrett Wilson's obviously going to be slid back into the starting lineup, probably for him. So might be a moot point anyway. But Goddard, they got him involved last week. I think that continues. I really feel like he's just kind of the unsung guy of that offense because obviously everyone's keying these receivers and Swift now. So Goddard just seems to kind of be that, get the one-on-ones, get the matchups that you want to see. And that, I think you get a bounce back from Moshe here. Obviously, pretty rough go last week for his standards. Obviously, I think he had 7 points, but I think he bounces back. I don't know if he gets 30, but I think he's going to be closer to the projection than not at minimum. And then looking at Zach's team here, it comes down to Tyreek Hill, man. I really it does every week. But I think there's some poetic justice in this matchup here. I do think Mike Evans has a fantastic day. Mike hates Mike Evans. That is my only reasoning as to why I think that. Mike is a huge Mike Evans hater.
Why does he hate Mike Evans?
He's the worst player in the league's history. He's owned him in the past, and he's cost him some games. So he tends to holds a grudge pretty well. But I think he has another huge day. But that being said, I think this is another really high scoring game. I think Zach crushes his projection, but I still think Risky gets the win. That's probably another 130-ish game here, I think.
Yeah, I think I slightly lean towards Mike as well. I think also the one sort of thing I'll add, because you gave some good analysis there, is I think I would consider adding Garrett Wilson in over Watson, even if Watson does play.
Yeah.
To me, they're not different. They're both with pretty below average passing offense, not great quarterback play. But one's coming off a bye and is by far the best player on his team. I think it's probably going to – I mean, I guess you could say Watson kind of is too. I don't dislike Christian Watson, but I do think Wilson's going to probably have a pretty solid game here coming out of the bye. Mm-hmm. The Giants, I mean, Diggs kind of carved them up. I think you can pass on them some. I know the defense played pretty well against the Bills. Wasn't bad overall. But if it were me, I would make that move. I think either way, though, probably, like I said with the last matchup, by a measure of 5-ish points. I think Zach's team is good too. And it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if you see Evans or Tyreek Hill go off. For me, it just kind of comes down to the disappointment of Jerome Ford being hurt, because I don't love seeing Rashawn Johnson in there. I think even if he does play, they're probably going to see Donta Foreman keep the 1A at worst, 1A, 1B, probably more like 1 and 2 in that role. Yeah. So for that reason, I will lean Mike.
I got you. Yeah, it's a good point about Jerome Ford. He's been shockingly great. I mean, obviously Chubb goes down, and that's a really good offensive line they have. But
he's Wally Pitt, Nick Chubb, you could say.
I like it. I'll let you start on my matchup here, and then I'll close out all of that.
That makes sense. If one of us wants to talk about you, it's going to be me. So let's talk about
you. It is.
So starting out in your team here, very close projections. You have 2 points separating you guys from ESPN's guesses here. And I think that's probably fairly close. Before I say anything about your team here, let's talk about Chris Olave. Explain because you're right, you do have Palmer and Downs in there. And I guess the way to do it is benching Olave. Is this because of the arrest? Is this because you hate him? What's going on?
I think, obviously can't let Christian Kirk go on the bench at all. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, he's definitely in.
I think Palmer and Herbert have a fantastic connection, and he seems to look for him a lot in a lot of tight third down situations, because obviously everyone keys Keenan Allen. So Palmer obviously gets the one-on-ones, and I know Herbert likes to go to him a lot, and he's explosive as all hell. I think he had 135 yards last week. So I'm really a big Josh Palmer fan. I like the way he plays. And then, like you kind of talked about with Josh Downs, he's been blowing up the last 3 weeks. So I think he's a must start at this point. And Olave, the targets are there, but the production hasn't been there. And I just feel like all 3 of these guys that I've slated in the starting lineup are going to make the absolute most of their opportunities, where Olave just kind of seems to be a lot of maybe he'll catch it, because he had a couple drops last week too. So he just seems a little bit mentally out of it. Obviously, he had the arrest going on Monday, so something's clearly a little bit funky in his head. He needs, I think the Saints honestly could give him a week off. He might need a mental reset week or something like that. But I'm at the point with him where I just feel like these guys are better options as a ceiling play, because I'm at the point where I need to take risks to get. So what I've been doing hasn't been working. Obviously, I was 1-5 going into last week. So I think I'm ignoring the projections. I'm putting what I think is the 3 best receivers in my starting lineup.
It's probably a fair take. I agree with you on all of it, except for I'd probably still play Olave over Palmer personally.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason being I don't know if they're going to have to throw that much against the Bears. I feel like you might not see a ton of it in the second half. I think you might see a lot of Austin Eckler. We hinted at some of that earlier. Olave, I know he's just gotten arrested. Who the hell knows how that impacts us? Maybe it means they try to make him feel included and feel right. I mean, he was speeding. He didn't do anything overly illegal. He was just going 70-35. But maybe he's disciplined, like you said. Maybe he sits out. Dude, maybe he's Bijan this week and sits out the first half. I remember Belichick used to do it with guys all the time. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me. So I think your thought process is reasonable.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't the Chargers the Sunday night game this week?
Yeah.
So I'll know what's happening with Olave before I have to make a decision with Palmer. So even if I do decide to put, that's probably where I would.
The reason I would go Downs over Palmer, though, too, just to finish up, is I think you're going to see Lattimore clamp down on Pittman, and as a result, I think Downs is going to keep eating against New Orleans because their defense is not special against the pass.
And Pittman's target share has been pretty low.
I think Downs is becoming number one anyway, but I think based on reputation, he'll follow Pittman.
You're probably right. But yeah, I could see me putting Olave in for Palmer, but we'll see.
Your take is reasonable, I think.
I wanted to do this now, beginning of the week, and kind of sit on it as opposed to tinker all week and go back and forth on it. Because just go ahead and doing it makes it easier to kind of sort out for me mentally. But
yeah, I think it's also funny. Neither of us is saying play Cortland Sutton even against the Chiefs. Yeah, I think he picked up those anyway.
I have really good receiver options. I feel like, and
you do. You have a lot of good receivers.
So
moving on to the other side here too. So Stafford, we talked a little bit about with Puka and Cooper Kupp, the condensed target share of Stafford. Stafford's also just been fascinatingly unlucky this year. I don't know if it all corrects this week or not, but Kyron Williams was a red zone touchdown monster. This past week, Darrell Henderson comes off the street on Wednesday, scores a touchdown on Sunday. Stafford has played above average quarterback play and has very few touchdowns to show for it. So I don't know if it's this week, but that is coming. I think it'll correct and he'll have like a 3 or 4 touchdown game. It's got to be out there somewhere. Bijan, I could see Bijan going either way too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does he come back from does he have headaches still and either not play or play limited snaps? Even when he wasn't headached up, they were giving Tyler Algier with that half.
Well, that's the thing. You don't have to shove Bijan. Obviously, he's the best player on the team, but Algier's clearly the asset.
At worst, he's going to get 40% of the carries, and on the other side, maybe more than that. We'll see.
Right.
But I can also see them saying, "Hey, Bijan, you're feeling better. Here's more than half this time." Right. And he's so explosive, even if he's only getting half the carries, he's good anyway.
Right.
Taylor, I think we've finally seen him. I think we've seen the last of probably Zach Moss out touching him. Mm-hmm. Zach Moss may have a game where he blows up still, just because he's way better than I think people realized he was. But Taylor's definitely the guy. Again, I would say probably 70-30 there. Diggs, freak, monster, not much to say there. Godwin, that should be interesting because you mentioned it with Evans too. I think they have to pass on that matchup, and the Bills' defense has not been great since all their injuries. So even though the defensive matchup grade is high, like their defense that shut down the Dolphins back in week 2 or 3, whatever that was, is a very different version than what you see now. Yeah. I think Godwin's a pretty good week. Pitts, who the hell knows?
He's been trending in the right direction though.
Yeah, I guess. Johnny still plays as much or more though. It's so annoying. I have Kyle Pitts in our league too, and Kyle Pitts is Dalton Kincaid, basically. But they're both looking at Sam Laporta, and that's what people expect when they draft that hotshot rookie tight end. So Sam Laporta is the answer to people saying, "Why do you keep drafting Kyle Pitts year after year? You're the guy with Kyle Pitts." Hopefully, this is going to be years off. We'll see. Maybe not. Lockett is very consistent. I like that play there. All in all, I don't have a ton with the defenses and the kickers, other than just I think I slightly lean towards Nate's side on those. But I would probably say this ends up being a little over this. I'd say in the 110-ish range for you both, but I will slightly lean towards Team Nate. Sorry, Matt.
That's okay. We love adversity around here.
Just kind of like, man, I've been giving the fuel.
Yeah, so I mean, just kind of, we talked a lot about my team already, but I am adding George Kittle to my starting lineup. That's obviously an improvement over Gerald Everett. Aaron Jones is going to be coming off his pitch count. I think that only shines. He looked really good last week. From what I saw of him in that game, even though with his limited targets, I think he still had 8 points. So I look forward to him being a more predominant role. You know, do we think about Donta Foreman in some capacity if Bijan is questionable with his head stuff, or in the flex position over Lockett? That's an interesting debate that I could see. I think Diggs and JT, they're gonna do their thing. I think both of us go over these projections because, like I said, I feel really good about my receivers, and obviously adding Kittle increases my projection, and Aaron Jones I think goes up, and Herbert I think bounces back against a really bad Chicago team. So I think both these games, this is going to go in probably the 110s, closer to 120 maybe.
Agreed.
But I'm going to win, just because there's not much else needs to be said. The boys are really buzzing off the win last week, so just going to be a really good week for the boys. Going to have a sit down with Olave in a couple
I was
days
gonna say,
here.
if you play Olave, I reserve the right to say I might take your side anyway. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a sit down with him on Thursday, so we're gonna sort this out, I think. But we'll see. Me, him, and Derek Carr are gonna get in the locker room and see who comes out. But
Derek Carr is such a
yeah,
I don't know what to call him, man. He's such a fake alpha. I don't know what that is. Why is he so in that game where he played like ass? Just throwing uncatchable balls. He's yelling at these guys. Sure, Olave broke his rod off, but the ball was out of bounds, man. I don't know what you're so mad about.
Yeah, he just seemed very rattled.
It felt very. Remember when Russ, when he was hurt, was doing all those weird ass stretches like an hour before the game, and for everyone to see these weird like cutoffs.
Yeah,
it feels very performative. The same way the high knees and the playing with Russ was that way. I think Carr is performative in that way, and it irritated me. I feel bad.
mean, it's not a good look, man. I can get I know Lamar gets very fiery sometimes, but he's very seldom is he'll slam the ball and he'll cuss, but very seldom is he screaming at a guy.
Showing up to a player.
I don't. And if he has done that before, but Derek Carr did it 15 times in that game. It seemed like. So yeah, who knows with that offense? It's very interesting. They're a very confusing team. I don't know if they're good. I don't know if they're bad, or I don't know if they're just okay. They feel like a 6-10 team at this point to me, but
I think Carr just has Kamara in fantasy, and he's just playing out the string.
Makes sense. That would be a good reason.
Yeah,
but yeah. Any closing thoughts here? We kind of touched on a lot of different things here, but any closing thoughts on what we discussed, or just this week in general?
Nah. Good luck, everybody. Have a fun week. I look forward to hopefully maintaining the top spot, but even if I don't, I look forward to the postseason after the second half here. Should be a fun second half.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm really looking forward to a lot of these matchups. I'm looking forward to you and Purcell's matchup. Looking forward to Ryan and Wazinski's. I think it's gonna be really good. And there's one more that I'm really looking forward to.
Purcell, unlike anybody else I've ever met in this group chat for your league, Matt, where he texts about the other teams.
Yeah.
It is. I'm not knocking it. I think it's actually really fun. But whenever he talks about mine, I'm like, dude, what? Because he's always critical. I'm like, why are you so adamantly watching my matchup? So I can't wait till this Sunday when hopefully he'll be quiet because my team's playing well. But I'm sure if not, I'm gonna have to hear all this shit about whatever his guys are doing. So
you will either way, whether they're sucking or blowing or winning, you're gonna hear it all. But that just comes with the territory of playing Purcell, and he has no shame in his game. So with that being said, good luck, everybody. Going to be a really fun week, I think, and going to be a pivotal week, I think, setting up here for the playoffs. But thanks for joining me, Nick, and have a good rest of your night.
All right. Love you, Matt.
All right, you too, bud.